103.5 WCOM-LP, Chapel Hill and Carborough's 100-watt wonder. Listener-supported community radio.
Good afternoon, Carborough. Welcome to the Carberean Radio Hour on WCOM 103.5, Carborough's community radio. That was Three Little Birds, Bob Marley and the Wailers. We have a bird theme today, and the reason for that will become obvious as our show goes on. Today we have special guests in the studio talking about storytelling. This is Jennifer, editor and publisher of the Carberean New Local newspaper. And today we're going to talk about storytelling, the art and science and life-affirming and sometimes life-changing experience it can be to share a story from your life with other people, friends or strangers. And so in the studio today with me, we have Julia F. Green, who owns Writing is Joy, teaches storytelling and hosts story jams in Carborough and Chapel Hill. And she's brought two storytellers who performed at a storytelling event at the Art Center last month, Terry Casstevens and Rachel Moon. Thank you all for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Yeah. All right. So, Julia, let's start with you. Tell us about storytelling, why you do this, why it's important, what role it serves in our lives.
Sure. First, though, Jen, thanks so much for having us. Storytelling is a topic I never tire of because everybody has a story. And my journey with storytelling truly began just about 20 years ago when I got punched in the face. It was... I was on an adventure. I was in a strange place. I walked into a boxing class where you might expect that you could get punched in the face, but it was a surprise to me. And I walked out of that room, and I actually carried that story with me for a long time. It was sort of a pivotal moment in my 20s. I was trying to figure out who I was, and that punch kind of knocked some sense into me. And I thought about that story for a long time and wanted to tell it and wanted to share it. And I had the opportunity to get on stage at the Monty many years ago and tell that story. And it was just really powerful. It was really affirming to have a couple minutes, to have the microphone, to not be interrupted, and to share a story that ultimately was about, a person finding their way and falling down and some hard knocks, literally in this case. And I had a great time being on stage, and I had a great time connecting with the audience around this thing that had happened to me. And I then, as my instructing around creativity increased, started teaching storytelling at the Carborough Arts Center in 2019. And, excuse me, it's really transformative. It's transformative to make a space where people can come and share their stories, which I could talk about all day long, but I will tell you fundamentally, I love storytelling because it's really fun and it's really surprising. And there's so much in our day-to-day lives that is not fun and is not surprising. And a lot of us are kind of following our scripts and knocking out our to-do lists, and storytelling is this opportunity to get out of our day-to-day and connect with people and hear entertaining stories, hear moving stories. And, one of the main things that really draws me to storytelling is that it's accessible. There's a lot. The great thing about Carborough is people have so many different creative habits, which I love. And storytelling is one that you really don't need you don't need a loom. You don't need a studio. You don't need special training. If you ask anybody on the streets of Carborough or wherever you are, you could get a story out of them pretty fast. And I really delight in the opportunity to meet people and hear their stories and help them tell them better.
Yeah, I found that too with starting the Carborian, just meeting people and hearing stories and being able to amplify those stories has been such a gift. So you mentioned the Monty, and I think many of us are familiar with the Moth Story Hour and traditions like this, or more modern traditions that have come up in public spaces. And do you see what you're doing as part of that tradition, localizing that, bringing that to Carborough?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up those outlets, and also just the fact that storytelling is one of our oldest art forms. I am not a visual artist, but I think about tens of thousands of years ago, we were doing two things. We were making cave paintings, and we were sitting around the fire telling stories. We've always done this, and we'll always be drawn to it. And I really spent a lot of time listening to the Moth over the years. I loved it. I continue to love it. And the endeavor that I'm working on here in Carborough, which I'm calling Story Connection, was born actually out of funding from the Orange County Arts Commission. And I received a grant for a specific purpose, which was to offer a free class for underrepresented voices, which is something I've done 2 years in a row and we'll be doing again this spring. And storytelling, to me, and where it kind of fits into this constellation of different outlets that you're describing, Story Connection is about making space for people's voices and intentionally making space for voices that we don't always hear. So the free class for underrepresented voices is an opportunity to hear from folks who belong to groups that have been marginalized, that have been silenced, that have been, pressured to not use their voice. And I think of storytelling as a way to make people heard and seen and create connections really across groups that maybe don't always interact, which I think is a really powerful aspect of it.
Yeah, can you describe what it's like to be in the audience of a storytelling event? Why you think people show up just to be in that space to hear things, and what kind of mood or feeling or energy is in that space?
I have a lot of answers to that question, but I would really love to hear from our storytellers here today who've both been in the audiences, I think, before they've gotten on stage. Terry, you got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, that's how I got introduced to storytelling. And I think for me, it was really not just entertaining, but a way to find out about people, things that you would not expect to hear, and also just like really genuine, heartfelt things that you just don't get in other medias.
That you say at a party. Say you're at a party and you're talking to somebody and you're talking one-on-one, or you're hearing that in a group. How is that dynamic different at a storytelling event than from a party?
It is similar, but with the storytelling on stage, they've prepared and they practiced it, and so they really know how they're going to start and finish the story and just like get really to the point and hit all the like things that they want to get in there.
Rachel, you got any thoughts to add to that?
I would just say that, having listened to a lot of storytelling on, the Moth podcast and then actually being in the audience, you get the energy of the storyteller because you're in their presence. And that for me, it moves me to be in the presence of someone who is sharing something about their life in that way. And it is different than at a party, because I think that, in the social setting, people hold back certain parts, or they don't tell everything, or they might exaggerate, or they might skip over things. And so, people are more intentional when they're on stage, and you get more detail and more feeling, I think, in those stories.
I totally agree with that. And I think the thing that has really propelled storytelling for me in the last couple of years is what Rachel's describing, this energy that's in the room. And we live in such a strange time. We have so many screens and so many devices and so many intermediaries. And to sit in a room with other human beings and literally just talk and listen is so analog, and it just, I think, lights up all these parts of our brains and bodies that don't get a lot of airtime these days. And as Terry says, it's, people put a lot of effort into putting together great stories that can connect with an audience and really affect them. And the vulnerability and kind of the rawness that people bring to the stage is really amazing.
Would you call it entertainment?
Well, there's so much entertainment out there today. That's a big word. Sure. I mean, I think it can be entertaining.
Yeah, feels like more than entertainment.
Yeah. I think it's really meaningful, and I think it's an art form, and I think it's art. Just the way that we would go to a gallery and look at art, or so many of us sit around and make something real. Entertainment has I will say, a little bit of a monetized aspect to it, and Story Connection is not a for-profit endeavor. It values the art form and the connection above anything else.
I think the quality that stands out to me is when you leave a storytelling event, you continue to talk about it with the people you're with, and you kind of analyze what was said and why it was said, and those kind of things don't come from some other kind of entertainment that's just, more like, brain, capturing the attention of your brain instead of capturing the attention of your interest and excitement.
Your heart.
Your heart. Yeah. It's more of a full engagement, audience engagement. Let's stay on with that thread and talk about some of the transformations that you've observed in storytellers and in stories.
Gosh, I could also talk about that for hours and hours. There are a couple of people that come to mind, and before I jump into that, I'm curious, Terry, if you have anything to share about how taking a storytelling class and getting on stage changed anything for you.
Well, going into it, I was pretty scared about getting on stage and telling it, which is also part of the reason I wanted to do it, because I feel like it helps a person to grow, to do things that are uncomfortable. But after doing it and being on stage and getting that feedback from the audience, it was so exhilarating. And even like the night and the days following, I was still excited about having done it.
Yeah. I've heard that from a lot of storytellers, that the buzz of being on stage lasts for a long time afterwards. Yeah, and I think, They're storytellers who've come to the class and the stage and told extremely personal stories. And this fall, Sally was on stage last spring, and she told a story about both about living with her disability. She was born with cerebral palsy, and also about how people treated her, having that disability, including her own father. And she told a really powerful, vulnerable story. And several months later, from her storytelling evening, her father passed away. And she told me that she wrote the eulogy and that she was able to say goodbye to him and make peace with some of his less fine moments because she had a chance to kind of tell that story on stage and make a narrative out of what were some really challenging interactions and experiences. And the thing about stories, it's so powerful. We get to make a story out of your experience. We are bombarded right now with everybody else's story and stories about how we should look and how we should feel and what we should eat and what we should buy. So having the opportunity to take your own lived experience and express something about what happened and what it meant to you is really powerful.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Rachel and Terry, on transformations?
Well, one thing for me in this process, because I've been on stage now, on like a proper stage twice, but I've done several storytelling events as well. So one thing I notice is like my comfortability with being on stage is I'm pretty comfortable with it, but I'm used to being in character because I've done a lot of theater.
Yeah.
And so what I've had to transform within myself is like getting to be myself on stage instead of being in character. And sometimes I am in character as myself. But yeah, I haven't yet really had to tell a challenging story, although the first story that I told on stage did have some challenging elements to it that I didn't know how to incorporate into the end product story, but it did get me thinking about different relationships that were related in that story. And just looking at those relationships differently.
I also have heard from folks about Brandon told a story, I think last winter, and it was a funny story. It was a hilarious story about going off to college and kind of wanting to reinvent himself. And he came to the storytelling class because he was tired of going home from work and playing video games, because he wanted to do something fun and something creative. And a storytelling class is a great way to get, I don't want to say out of a rut necessarily, but as adults, we don't always do as much exploration and experimentation, certainly as we did as kids. And it can be just a really wonderful addition. And, as Rachel pointed out, it's also an opportunity to kind of look at some things. Very often in the storytelling class, we'll come up against challenging relationships or events that we don't really know exactly what they meant or haven't resolved for us in our minds. And it's nice to have a space to work on that or look at it and see what we can kind of make together. And watching storytellers in class interact with each other and listen to each other's stories and give each other feedback and be thoughtful about how their stories can come together is like, it's a real delight.
Yeah, I think that making it together is really a key part of it. It's the connection.
Yeah.
Connection as part of the art, which is what draws people. Like Brandon, is tired of going home and playing video games and wants to not only refine a skill, but connect with people.
Yeah, I also think it's one of the few opportunities. A lot of people come into class for that connection and to interact with people that they don't necessarily interact with. So story connection has been really a delight because people from all generations are kind of coming to jams and classes, people from different backgrounds. We unfortunately don't have a lot of spaces where we're put into community with folks who don't work at the same place as we work, or their kids go to the same school as our kids, or, Carver is great because there's so many people here who've been here for decades, and yet being able to interact with folks who aren't necessarily in your primary circle super enriching. And a lot of people have, I think, through the class, had the opportunity to think about experiences or relationships that they wouldn't have thought about through somebody's story.
For sure. Well, let's hear one of those stories. Julia, you want to introduce it?
The first story we're going to listen to today is Terry's story. And he told the story on stage just a couple weeks ago. And as he said, he was a little afraid to get on stage. And I know he worked really hard on this story. We'll talk a bit after you hear it, but I'm just really excited to give you all a listen. And your feet and your mouths to give a very warm welcome to the stage, our next storyteller, Terry.
I do a lot of random things that I don't really have a purpose for or a goal in mind. I just think it's fun to do. I sometimes buy tools and materials to do these projects, but never start them. Sometimes I start projects and then just stop because I lose interest. And a part of me thinks that I shouldn't do that because I probably waste money on tools and stuff that I don't use. And also, I feel like maybe I should finish the projects I start. But one example of this is about 7 years ago, I decided to build a birdhouse. And I had a few tools, but I didn't really know what I was doing. It took me a while to build it, but I did. And I put it in the living room on the bookshelf. And in my mind, this project was done, and I was off to the next random thing. But my girlfriend at the time was like, "Aren't you going to put that outside?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then, of course, I didn't. And instead, I decided to buy a 3D printer. And so I'm playing with that, trying to figure out how to use it. And a few months go by, and again, my girlfriend's like, "Are you going to put that birdhouse outside?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, immediately, "I'm going to put it outside." So I was like, okay, I guess I'm putting this birdhouse outside. And I had another random idea to put this wireless camera inside of it that I had. And within an hour, there were birds getting in this. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're actually using it. And I'm looking at my phone to see the videos of these birds. And Carolina chickadees were getting in it, and eastern bluebirds were getting in it. And at the time, I didn't even know what kind of birds it was. And so that led to me putting more cameras on the deck at the feeder, filming more birds. And I'm continuing to watch these birds inside the birdhouse. And so I had another random idea to put some videos on YouTube. And I'm collecting videos from this birdhouse to make a compilation to put on YouTube. And so the bluebirds built a nest, and they laid one little blue egg, and then each day another one, until there were 5. So it was really magical seeing this, because normally you don't see what's going on inside there. And they hatch, and the parents are feeding them constantly. They're growing like crazy. And it was really fun to see all that. But then as the summer got into swing, that I noticed that these babies were looking distressed. And I thought that because they were holding their mouths open all the time, and they were kind of spread out in there weird. But again, I didn't know what's supposed to happen, so I didn't think too much about it. But ultimately, one of these babies died, and the mother bluebird saw that and took it out of the nest. And then another one until there was only one left. And that one, with all the space and all the food, it did really well and grew up and flew away. And I even had a camera on the outside catching this baby fly away. It was super cute, little blue fluffy bird. And so after that, I started kind of looking into what birdhouse design should be. And I realized that I hadn't made this box with ventilation. And that's why these babies had died, because it got too hot in there. And so that was really upsetting to me that I had caused that. And I wanted to fix it. So I built another one with ventilation. Then I built a third one that had a 3D printed camera shell. Then I built a fourth one that had a different roof design for further helping the heat. And this went on for a while, and until now I've probably built around 300 birdhouses. And now I have birdhouses at my mom's house, at my friend's house, at my house. They're anywhere somebody will take. And I got cameras in all of them. Some of them have 3 cameras on one birdhouse. And I've seen some really joyful things where little birds will just like fall out of the shell, and the parent standing there with food to give it to them immediately. I've seen these huge bugs that the parents bring that you think there's no way this baby can eat this. Like, I've seen cicadas, I've seen praying mantis, and somehow these babies always choke them down. So I've started to embrace my impulsive, intuitive, random projects, and realizing that sometimes that can turn out better than what I planned.
Terry, thank you. Thanks for sharing that story with us here. Julia,
Warm up your hands.
Sorry about that. Did you have some questions for Terry about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, let's just start at the beginning. You said you were a little afraid to get on stage, and why did you take the class and decide to do it?
Yeah, I think I mentioned to you before that I get in front of people a lot for work reasons, and you would think it would be the same thing, but somehow it's not, because work is more like, it's not personal, and it's about stuff that you know a lot about. But when you tell stories, you're telling stuff that's more intimate about you, and you're standing probably in front of people you don't know, and so it's just a different experience.
Mm-hmm. And how did you decide that this was the story you were going to tell on stage?
Well, I kind of didn't know what I wanted to tell, and then this one happened to be the one I had practiced the most, and I just kind of went with it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any specific challenges or choices that you faced as you were putting together the story?
Yeah, absolutely. I told this story to Rachel several times, and the first time I told her, it was much longer and much different, actually. And so I think the thing that you brought to the class that I didn't really know about is how do you start a story and how do you end a story so that it kind of makes a whole package. So I spent a lot of time working on the beginning and the end,
Yeah.
and also cutting out parts that didn't contribute.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for new storytellers is they think, oh, I'll just tell a story. Going back to that party or that, at the bar, you just tell a story, but it's to be on stage, you got to have a beginning, you got to have a middle, you got to have an end, and it takes a lot of practice and decisions about which parts to leave in and which parts to take out. And were you happy with your performance in that story?
I was happy. It gives me the motivation to want to do it more, even if it's just like at a story jam.
Yeah.
I feel like it can benefit me in other areas too, because as I alluded to, I do a YouTube channel, and so I want to incorporate more storytelling into the videos. But yeah, just, talking to people about what you want to communicate to them can be so much better if you sort of organize it in a better way.
Yeah, I think that I always tell students that storytelling is instinctive. If you've ever been around a small child, they'll just start telling you a story, and it's not because they ever learned how to do that. It's kind of in our DNA. But at the same time, their story's not going to have a beginning and a middle and an end. It's just going to kind of ramble on. And it's great to have the opportunity in classes at the Art Center and even at the monthly story jams that Terry is referring to. We get together once a month at the Chapel Hill Public Library and various places just to tell stories. It's great in those settings to have the opportunity to kind of carve and craft and shape a little bit so that those stories can be more expressive and more effective trying to connect with other people. Anything for you that was different after taking the class than before?
I think before taking the class, I had this impression of stories that you just sit around telling your friends and family, and they would be told over and over again, and they would get more embellished the more times it was told. So I had this feeling that stories were not true, and I asked you about that. Are these stories supposed to be true? And you were like, yes. And I like that. I think true stories are the best. Because you really can't make up true stories. And I feel that way about movies too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does. My impression of stories is different now. Yeah.
Yeah, and to that point about kind of truth and fiction, a lot of people say to me, well, I'm not going to get on stage. I'm not going to take a class. I don't have any stories. Nothing's happened to me. And that just is not true. Everybody has a story. Terry just told us a great story about, I built this birdhouse on a whim. And now I have this YouTube channel, and I built 300 birdhouses, right? So the stories and the experiences that we're accustomed to can very much have an impact on other people or teach them something that they didn't know, which is why I think stories are so great.
Yeah, my favorite part of that performance, I was there at that show, and also again in the recording, you can hear the audible gasp of the audience when you say, and now I have over 300 birdhouses. Like, it's wow. You really appreciate the love you bring to that craft and how much it means to you, and that you've shared that with us, and now it means a lot to us too. All right, so let's take a quick break. We're going to hear a song called The Littlest Birds by the Be Good Tanyas. This is WCOM 103.5, and when we come back, we'll hear a story from Rachel Moon.
Places pass through you, but you carry them with you on the soles of your traveling shoes. Well, I love you so dearly, I love you so clearly. I'll wake you up in the morning so early just to tell you I got the wandering blues. I got the wandering blues, and I'm gonna quit these rambling ways one of these days.
Okay, we're back. The Carberry Radio Hour on WCOM 103.5. And I'm going back to you, Julia. You're going to tell us about the second storyteller.
Yeah, we're going to hear another story from Rachel Moon, who is another Carborough resident and a very accomplished maker. This is a story that I know you're going to love, but I also think you'll love the backstory, the behind the scenes. So we had a show a couple weeks ago, we had a lineup, and as happens, somebody pulled out at the last minute. They were not feeling well, and I was a little bit fretting, and Rachel came up to me at the show and said, I have a story. And I said, really? And she said, yeah, can I get on stage? Would it be okay? And I was like, yes, I have a hole in my lineup. I have Rachel, who's taken the class before, who's been on stage before, and I didn't know anything about what the story was. And this is just sort of the magic of live storytelling. She took the stage, you'll hear this great story, and you never know quite what's going to happen, which is part of what's so great about it. Moon to the stage to tell us the story.
I have not historically been very successful at romantic relationships. I'm sure you've all heard of the concept of a broken picker. I don't think I ever had a picker installed. I had something more like a Russian roulette wheel thing that just spun and the ball would land somewhere and I'd go, oh, that looks nice, I'll take that. It didn't really work. I didn't know I could pick. I didn't know I had a choice. Then in 2021, I got sober. And I hit the reset button on my life. And I spent 3 years single. During that time, there were some people that were interesting, that were interested, and I had some conversations with them and realized I didn't really like them and I wasn't interested anymore. And that was good. I was starting to recognize I had preferences, that there were things that I liked and things that I didn't like, and I was getting to know myself. So after about 3 years in 2024, I struck out to the apps. And I met a few people, and some of them were interesting, but I wasn't interested. But there was one person that stood out. And he stood out because he was handsome and creative, and he was interested in me. He didn't say anything in our messages on the app about how I looked. He was curious about what I liked and what I did and my art. I did have some reservations, though. First, all his pictures on his dating profile, he had a button-down shirt on. And he had a real job. He was a computer programmer. And he built birdhouses. Now, I am a unshaven, not makeup wearing, no high heels, no pantyhose, harem pant donning, hippie punk mystic who wears t-shirts and tries to avoid doing anything that involves computers if I can help it, unless I'm watching a movie. Would he like me? Would we have anything in common? And then there were the birdhouses. All I could imagine were little doll houses built for birds with a little chimney and a mailbox out front and a little fence around them, and they were pink and blue and they had windows. Could I, as an admitted art snob, date anyone who made something like that? I didn't know. But we met, and I was very nervous. And he showed up not wearing a button-down shirt. Wasn't he taking this seriously? We made polite and awkward conversation until we ended up on the subject of cat nutrition. And neither one of us has a cat. I don't know how we got there. But he made a polite and gentle joke, and I relaxed. And then the moment of truth came. Would you like to see my birdhouses? I didn't know if I could be kind when I saw them. I was so worried. He pulled out his phone. I took a deep breath. He was searching through his photos. I prayed to be kind. He turned his phone to show me the picture of his birdhouse, and the image practically glowed with all the time, care, and attention that he put into this birdhouse. It was not a dollhouse for a bird. It was a bird box. But it wasn't just a bird box. It was a thing of elegance and simple beauty. I was awestruck, and I felt my heart completely open to this person in front of me. He asked me for another date, and I said yes. And on our second date, he wore a button-down shirt. Thanks.
So, Rachel, I'm curious, how did this story come together for you?
Well, so there was a story jam that was going to happen the night before the performance, right. And it was on first impressions. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to tell the story of my first impression of Terry, mm-hmm. because it is not anything like what I know him to be now that we've actually gotten to know each other. And so I thought, especially the part about ending up talking about cat nutrition and just like having all these thoughts about him being more conservative than he actually is, and all of these things, I thought they were really funny. Mm-hmm. And something that I really enjoy is getting to be on stage and being funny, because I didn't know that I could do it. Mm-hmm. So that was actually part of my desire to get up on stage, is to try to be funny in front of people and see what happens. Yeah.
And it happened. It was funny. We all laughed. Although I have a not funny question, which is, you mentioned your sobriety in the story. Was that something that felt vulnerable, or did you debate about it, or what was your thought about that?
It's funny. When I originally put the story together, I thought I was going to tell it at the Story Jam. And in those rooms, I have yet to meet anybody that I meet in other contexts. Mm. So it didn't feel so vulnerable, because I thought I could just leave it there and walk away. Yeah. But then I told it in front of some of his friends from college, mm-hmm. and your neighbors. And I was like, well, I guess I'm doing this, And it did feel more vulnerable in that context.
I was really impressed with the story. I was just so, to the word we used before, I was entertained, but in addition to being funny, it had this really real underbelly, this theme of, how do we connect with people, the judgments that we bring, the awkwardness of dating. It has sort of all that humanity in it. And I am curious how did you workshop this story? So Rachel's been in the class and we do stories together and we give feedback. Did you get any feedback on this story before you performed it? Or did you just know, this is it, I got it?
No, but I definitely went through it a couple times on my own. Yeah. Because it was a little more awkward and a little more polished. I tend to get into this mode when I first put together the story, because I will write it down, where it's more like a performance than I'm standing there telling you the story. Uh-huh. And so I have to kind of get it out of that, this is it, this part and that part, and then it feels very mechanical at first, and so I have to kind of break it up.
So I got to ask both of you, in terms of practicing and rehearsing, are we doing it in the shower, in front of the mirror, as we walk down the street. Everybody's process is a little bit different. How do you go about rehearsing?
Definitely in the shower, walking around in my apartment. Like I'll just walk around in a circle and tell it. Put a timer on sometimes just to see how long it is. Washing the dishes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Terry, how about you?
Well, I practice it walking around town, but only inside my head.
Yeah.
And then at home, I walk around and tell it out loud.
Yeah, I also pace my house. Speaking of cat nutrition, I have cats. They're good listeners. But this is the sort of stuff that we like to break down in class. Like, what does rehearsal look like? And, do people like to record? Do they like to draft stories on the page? And there is a whole lot of technique and preparation that goes into these stories, which I think is the fun part of it, too, because I like to be in process creatively. And I like storytelling because it kind of fits different people in different ways.
We've been talking about performing these, right? Performing them on stage. We listen to recordings of performances.
Yep.
How would it be different if you sat here and told the story in the mic like this, just in a room with us? How would that be different, Julia?
Well, if it was for the Carborian Radio Hour, it would be very similar. I would rehearse and I would make sure that I knew my beginning and I knew my ending, and I had kind of a container for the story. I think the real difference about being on stage and even in the classroom is like we don't interrupt each other. We don't cut each other off. And that kind of ability to be heard without interruption and also kind of without commentary. We live in a time of commentary and feedback and likes and hearts and thumbs downs. And storytelling is really just an opportunity to put out what you want to share and let people take from it whatever they take from it. And as Terry alluded to earlier, sometimes we talk about those stories for a while. And certainly they lodge in my head. I have now a whole encyclopedia of all the stories that I've heard, which I think makes me lucky.
Yes. Yes, you are lucky. And I've been so lucky that you all joined me in the studio today. This has been delightful. Rachel, do you want to, let's see. Julia, you were going to tell us about some upcoming opportunities.
Sure. Gosh, there's so much story happening. So all of the upcoming events that I'm about to talk about are on our website, which is storyconnection.com, story-connection. We have that cool little hyphen in our URL. This winter, there is a class at the Carver Arts Center. There is a free class at the Seymour Center in Chapel Hill, which is funded by the Orange County Arts Commission. We are having a monthly story jam on January 20th at the Chapel Hill Public Library. And story jams are great because they're super casual. Nothing is recorded. We just come and tell stories. You can come and just listen to stories if you want to get a feel for what it's all about. And every story jam, as Rachel alluded to, has a prompt. And the prompt for January Story Jam is lies. The lies that we are told, that we tell ourselves. And people always come up with such interesting stories and kind of variations on the theme. So if you're story curious, join us on January 20th at the Chapel Hill Public Library. And in the spring, we will have the free class for underrepresented voices as well, funded by the Orange County Arts Commission that we've done a couple years in a row. And if you're really, really hungry for story, go listen to the podcast. You can find all the episodes on our website, story-connection.com. We have a dozen episodes out now, including one with Rachel and Terry, because you want to hear those stories again, and you want to be able to tell your friends, I heard these amazing stories on the radio today. Here, you can listen to them. So there's a lot of story out there, and I'm super excited about it and so appreciative of you and your listeners' attention today.
Oh, thank you so much. Any last words on storytelling? Terry, Rachel, as storytellers.
One thought I had while we were talking earlier was that the difference in telling it on stage in front of people for me, which I didn't know until I did it, was the reaction of the crowd. Because I had practiced it many times alone. And then when I taught it on stage and people were laughing or just making sounds, I was like, oh wow, they're listening to what I'm saying.
Yeah, pretty powerful.
Yeah, so that's part of the art together, right? All right, well, thanks again for coming on the Carberry Radio Hour today, and thank you all out there for listening. So we return next week, same time, same place, Monday, 4 to 5, and we'll be playing the songs that got us through 2025 playlist, which you can also find on Spotify. It's TCRH, the Carberry Radio Hour, WCOM, songs that got us through 2025. And I'm adding songs to that list as you send them to me at info@thecarberryanoneword.com. So thanks. Have a wonderful week. We're going to close out with a beautiful rendition by Allison Adams Tucker on a classic They Might Be Giants song. You'll recognize it.
I'm your only friend. I'm not your only friend, but I'm a little glowing friend. But really, I'm not actually your friend, but I am. Blue canary in the outlet by the light switch. Who watches over you? Make a little birdhouse in your soul, not to put too fine a point on it. Say I'm the only bee in your bonnet. Make a little birdhouse in your soul. Da-da, da-da. I have a secret to tell from my electrical well. It's a simple message, and I'm leaving out the whistles and bells. So the room must listen to me, filibuster vigilantly. My name is Blue Canary, one note spelled L-I-T-E. My story is infinite, like the Longines Symphony. It doesn't rest. Blue canary in the outlet by the light switch. Who watches over you? Make a little birdhouse in your soul, not to put too fine a point on it. Say I'm the only bee in your bonnet. Make a little birdhouse in your soul. I'm your only friend. I'm not your only friend, but I'm a little glowing friend. But really, I'm not actually your friend, but I am. There's a picture opposite me of a primitive ancestry which stood on rocky shores and kept the beaches shipwreck-free. Though I respect that a lot, I'd be fired if that were my job. After killing Jason off and countless screaming Argonauts, bluebird of friendliness, like a guardian angel, it's always near. Blue canary in the outlet by the light switch. Who watches over